"Don't drink that," screamed the bartender at the Mafia Boss as she knocked it from his hand. The rain against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Nebula room was a cold, persistent hiss. Outside, the Duwamish River was a ribbon of black ink, but in here, everything was drenched in deep, electric purple. The bass from the speakers wasn't just sound, it was a physical pressure, a synthetic heartbeat that vibrated up through the soles of my shoes and rattled the rows of crystal glasses hanging above my head. Each one fractured the violet light into 1,000 tiny, sharp stars. "My name is Juniper Park. Most people call me June. I was 24 years old and felt about 100. I was pulling a double. My feet aching inside cheap sneakers and my hands raw. The skin across my knuckles was cracked and bleeding. A lovely souvenir from the industrial-strength sanitizer I used to wipe down the mahogany bar top for the 10th time that hour. Every swipe was a small payment against the crushing weight of the Hearthline Private Benefit Fund, a predatory lender that had swallowed my college tuition and my family's peace of mind whole. The front door opened, letting in a swirl of wet Seattle air that smelled like ozone and old metal. I did not have to look up to know who it was. The entire atmosphere of the Nebula room shifted, the dull roar of conversation dipped, the laughter becoming brittle, before it self-consciously rose again, slightly too loud. I kept my head down, polishing a highball glass until it squeaked in protest. Valerio Corsini moved through the room like a shark in dark water, silent, smooth, and displacing everything around him without seeming to try. He did not run the city. He ran the veins beneath it, the warehouses, the shipping containers, the entire unseen logistics network of the Puget Sound. He was a ghost story manager's told new hires. Except he was real, and he was currently sliding onto the stool at the far end of my bar. He chose the same seat every time. It was the only one that gave him a perfect, unobstructed view of the main entrance, the service door, and the entire floor, all reflected in the large, convex circular mirror mounted on the opposite wall. He was a man who never wanted to see anything coming. He only wanted to see it reflected. He wore a tailored wool coat, dark gray and damp from the rain. He shrugged it off, revealing a simple black button-down. No tie, no flash. His presence was his armor. His 2 guards, mountains in suits, posted themselves by the exit, their eyes doing the talking. I walked over, my rag still in hand. "Mr. Corsini, the usual?" He nodded once, his dark eyes fixed on the mirror. Not on me. His usual was simple club soda, twist of lime in a rocks glass. A man with his level of control did not dull his senses in public. I turned to prepare it when a new server, barely 19 and shaking, approached him first. Her name was Anya, and this was only her 3rd shift. She was holding a silver tray with a single, tall glass, a highball. "Excuse me, sir," she whispered, her voice trembling. This was sent over, from the gentleman who just left." I paused, my hand halfway to the soda gun. Vale's eyes finally left the mirror, narrowing slightly as he looked at the drink. Anya pointed vaguely toward the door. "The man in the waterproof coat. He said it was a gift. For the boss. He said you'd know." I knew the man she meant. I had seen him leave. A nondescript figure who had nursed a beer for 30 minutes, paid in cash, and slipped out without a sound. Vale looked at the drink. It was filled with amber liquid, ice cubes clinking. He did not move to take it. He just stared. Anya, desperate to complete the transaction, pushed the tray a fraction of an inch closer. He already paid for it, sir." I stepped forward, ready to intervene, to tell her he did not accept gifts. But before I could speak, one of the thin, green laser lights from the DJ booth's display swept across the bar. It was just a stupid particle effect, meant to look cool in the smoke, but for 1/4 of 1 second, it illuminated the rim of the glass on Anya's tray. My breath hitched. It was not wet. It was not a salt rim or a sugar rim. It was a faint, almost invisible dusting of powder, and it shone with a sick, oily iridescence under the green light. It clung to the glass in a perfect crescent. I knew that shimmer. I had seen it on the news during reports about specialized hunting. It was a targeting marker, a high-contrast compound that was invisible to the naked eye but burned bright as a flare when viewed through an infrared scope. It was used to tag a target in a crowd. Vale finally lifted his hand, his long fingers closing around the base of the glass. My blood turned to ice. He raised it. As he tilted the glass toward his mouth, the ice cubes shifted. They did not clink. They scratched. It was a thin, high-pitched sound, like dragging a fingernail over slate. It was the sound of something gritty and wrong. It sounded like sand. My instincts, the ones honed by years of watching my back, of scanning crowds for threats, of living on the edge of financial ruin, screamed. They bypassed my brain, my fear of this man, my terror of losing this job. There was no thought, only a single primal command. Don't drink that. The words tore out of my throat, a raw shout that shattered the purple haze of the bar. I did not run around the bar. I put both my chapped hands on the wet counter and vaulted over it. My hip clipped the beer tap, but I did not feel it. Valerio Corsini looked up, his eyes wide with surprise, the glass just inches from his lips. I did not aim for the glass. I aimed for his hand. I slapped his wrist, hard, my palm connected with the bone, and the force was enough. The highball glass flew from his grasp. Time stopped. The glass hung in the air for an endless second before gravity took it. It hit the polished concrete floor and did not just break, it exploded. It detonated in a shower of liquid, ice, and glass shards. And powder. The iridescent dust, released from the rim, shot upward in a glittering, toxic cloud, catching the light like a nebula of dying stars. The entire bar went silent, the music, the conversations. Even the rain seemed to hold its breath. Every single person was frozen. Staring at me, the skinny bartender standing over the most dangerous man in Seattle, panting, with glass at my feet. Then, a flicker of movement. Outside, across the river, on the rooftop of the old cannery building, a pinprick of crimson light. It flashed into the bar, a solid red beam, impossibly fast. It lanced through the space where Valerio Corsini's head had been, passed through the exact spot where the glass had been, and hit the mirror on the wall behind him, the red dot, the size of a dime, hovered for a second on the fractured glass before vanishing. The sniper had missed, the marker was gone, the target had moved. The spell broke. Anya screamed. Patrons dove for the floor. Vale's 2 guards were suddenly at the front door, guns drawn, shoving people back inside, shouting for everyone to get down, get away from the windows. They were professionals, forming a wall of muscle between the room and the river. But I was exposed. I was standing in the middle of the floor, the target of every eye, my chest heaving. I had just saved Valerio Corsini's life. I had just destroyed his enemy's trap. And in doing so, I had just painted a massive, glowing target on my own back. I was no longer the invisible girl wiping down a counter. I was the one who had interfered. The room was chaos, but my world shrank to a single point. Valerio Corsini had not moved. He had not flinched when the glass shattered, and he had not flinched at the red light. He slowly lowered his gaze from the mirror to the glittering poison on the floor, and then, finally, to me. He took one step, then another, closing the distance between us. He moved through the panic like it was nothing, a rock in a churning sea. I could not breathe. I expected him to be furious. I expected him to yell, to demand who I was, why I had touched him. He stopped directly in front of me. I had to crane my neck to look up at him. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but they were not angry. They were calculating, assessing. He saw me shaking, my entire body vibrating with adrenaline and terror. Slowly, as if approaching a spooked animal, he lifted his hand. He did not grab me. He did not threaten. He gently, lightly, placed his hand on my wrist, his thumb resting on my frantic pulse. His skin was warm, the touch was anchoring. He leaned in, his voice so low it was barely audible above the panic, a deep, steady rumble meant only for me. "From now on," Valerio Corsini said, his eyes holding mine, "I protect you." I was not fired. That was the first shock. The second was being led into the back office by Rhea, the Nebula Room's manager. Rhea was a woman who looked like she'd been carved from glacial ice. She had a shock of sharp, silver hair, or suits that cost more than my quarterly tuition used to, and she read people like they were delinquent invoices. She poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a heavy glass not for me, for herself, and downed it in one swallow. "You're a monumental idiot, Park," she said, her voice like gravel. She did not sit. She prowled the small office. "And you're the luckiest woman in Seattle." "He was going to drink it," I whispered, my hands still shaking so hard I had to hide them in the pockets of my apron. "Of course he was. That's what people do with drinks." She stopped and pinned me with a stare. "Do you have any idea who Valerio Corsini is?" I shook my head. "Just a customer, a big one." Rhea gave a short, bitter laugh. "He's not a customer. June, he's the landlord. He's the man who owns the air in this building. The Corsini Consortium doesn't just use the ports, it is the ports. Half the logistics in the Puget Sound, legal and otherwise, pass through his hands, and he has one rule. One single ironclad rule. Civilians do not get involved, ever. You just broke it." My stomach hollowed out. This was so much bigger than just a job. I am the daughter of a Tacoma fisherman. My world was supposed to be fishing boats, diesel fumes, and the constant, grinding anxiety of the Hearthline lawsuit. I dropped out of college, my pre-law track a bitter joke, all to work doubles at a mob-owned bar. My younger brother, hit with a cascade of nonsensical administrative fees from the same predatory fund, was the reason I took every shift I could get. I was here to earn money, to be invisible, to pay the bloodsuckers. I was not here to save mafia bosses. "I didn't think," I said, which was the truest thing I'd ever said. "That's obvious," Rhea sighed, the ice in her demeanor cracking for just a second. "The men who tried that tonight, likely the Thorn Syndicate, a crew of dock-hustling wannabes who think they can muscle in on Corsini's shipping lanes. They're stupid, and they're loud." I knew the Thorns. Everyone who worked near the water knew them. They were the ones who harassed the waitstaff, who made lewd comments, who shoved you if you did not get out of their way fast enough. I had spent 6 months perfecting the art of looking at the floor when they walked by, of making myself small and forgettable just to avoid their attention and keep my job. All that work erased in 1 second. After the police left a formality, as they seemed more intimidated by Vale's men than interested in the crime, Rhea sent me to clean the shattered glass. By the time I was done, Vale was gone. The bar was closed for the night. I was in the locker room, my hands shaking too much to unbutton my vest, when my phone buzzed, a number I did not recognize. A simple text. "You touched big business. Little girl, bad move." The air left my lungs. I read it again, and then a third time. They knew who I was. They had my number. I went from being a nameless bartender to a target, from an invisible girl to a potential weakness, a way to get at Corsini. I stumbled out into the alley, the rain a cold shock. I needed to get home. A black car, the same one Vale always arrived in, was idling at the curb. He was not in it. One of his guards, a man built like a refrigerator with a face that looked like he never smiled, got out of the passenger side. He did not say a word. He just held out a small, stiff card. It was matte black. No name, no logo, just a 10-digit number embossed on it in simple silver digits. I looked at him, confused. "From Mr. Corsini." The guard's voice was a low rumble. "Anything strange, anything at all, you call this number. He'll get there before the cops." He did not wait for a thank you. He got back in the car, and it pulled silently into the rain. I stood there, the card getting damp in my hand. I felt dizzy. I hated this. I hated him. I hated this world of quiet threats and implied violence. My father raised me to trust the law, to work hard, to be good. This card felt like a betrayal of all of that, but the text message on my phone felt like a death threat. With a shudder, I shoved the card deep into my pocket, a thin, sharp rectangle of self-respect slicing against my thigh. I would not be a pawn. I would not... The next day, Rhea called me 2 hours before my shift. "You're not on the floor tonight," she said, her voice flat. "You're in the back, inventory, polishing cutlery, understood." "Understood," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. The back, safe, invisible again. But the walk home that night was different. It was 3 a.m, the streets empty, the fog thick and low. Every footstep echoed. I felt a prickle on my neck, the undeniable animal instinct of being watched. I stopped at the corner of my street, pretending to dig in my bag. I glanced back. Halfway down the block, a dark blue sedan sat with its parking lights on, engine humming, the windows were tinted. It had not been there when I turned the corner. My heart hammered against my ribs. I walked faster, fumbling for my keys long before I reached my apartment building's graffiti-covered door. I shoved the key in the lock, my hands slick with sweat, and risked one more look. The sedan was still there, unmoving, a silent predator. And then I saw him. Across the street, standing in the recessed doorway of a closed bodega, was a man. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, and perfectly still. He was not looking at the sedan. He was looking at my building. It was Cade Romano, Vale's personal bodyguard, the quiet one. I scrambled inside, slamming the door and throwing all 3 deadbolts. I leaned against the solid wood, my breath coming in ragged gasps. A complex, sickening wave of emotion washed over me. I was being hunted by the sedan. I was being guarded by the man in the doorway. To be safe from one set of criminals, I was now under the protection of another. A deep, burning shame flooded my chest. Juniper Park, who had aced her ethics exams, was now a protected asset of the Corsini Consortium. I slid down the door and sat on my dirty welcome mat, staring into the darkness of my tiny studio apartment. For the first time, I finally understood. Being protected did not mean I was free. It meant I was watched. It meant my routines, my home, my life were now data points in Valerio Corsini's world. The realization settled over me, a strange and terrifying blanket. It was the first time I had felt physically safe in 24 hours. And it was the first time I had ever felt truly, completely trapped. I spent the next 2 days in the rattling, fluorescent-lit hell of the Nebula Room's basement stockroom. My world shrank to counting bottles of vodka and polishing stacks of silverware that were already clean. Cade Romano was a silent shadow, either across the street from my apartment or parked a block away from the bar's service entrance. I was a package, being monitored and moved, and I hated it. But Vale was not idle. He did not operate like the police, asking questions and filling out forms. He operated like a virus, inserting his influence into the system to get the data he wanted. I heard scraps of it from Rhea, who was now my only point of contact with the outside world. He had his network pulling manifests from every warehouse on the Duwamish. Which containers were accessed without authorization was the question he posed to his people. Which locks were cut? Which seals broken? The most critical piece of the puzzle was digital. Find the blind spots. He had ordered, and his team found it. At precisely 7 minutes past 10 p.m., the night of the attack, 7 different cameras covering the riverfront and the street opposite the Nebula Room had malfunctioned. A data lag, just 7 minutes, not long enough to trigger a system-wide security alert, but just long enough for a sniper to set up, take a shot, and get out. The tech was cheap, but it was smart. The retro-reflective powder I had seen was the key. It was designed to catch a specific low-light laser, making the rim of that glass light up like a bonfire to someone wearing a thermal scope. It was a simple, brutally effective way to pick one person out of a crowded, dark room. While Vale hunted for digital ghosts, I was haunted by a physical one. The shimmer, that oily, greenish-purple glitter. I kept seeing it in my mind, flashing under the DJ's laser. I was polishing a stack of coupe glasses when it hit me. I dropped the glass, which thankfully landed on a rubber mat. "Rhea!" I yelled, running up the basement stairs. She met me at the top, her face a mask of annoyance. "What?" "Park a rat." "Table 8, I said, breathing hard. "The night of the attack. Table 8, a group of 4 guys. They were laughing too loud, acting like they owned the place. Thorns." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "I know the table. They paid and left an hour before the incident." "No," I said, shaking my head. "One of them came back. He said he forgot his phone. I remember because I had to check the booth for him. He was wearing these ridiculous hiking boots, expensive ones. And when he walked away, I saw it. His heels were caked in mud, and the mud was glittering. Just like the powder. He must have tracked it in from wherever they set up the shot." I grabbed a bar rag, my hands shaking. "He didn't come back for a phone. Rhea. He was the one who spread the powder. He was in the bar. He walked right past me." Rhea stared at me for a long second, then grabbed the phone. "I'm calling Cade." Cade Romano, it turned out, was already on the move. The blue sedan had reappeared, parking 3 blocks from my apartment instead of 1. Cade, in his own unremarkable car, had been waiting. He followed it. He tailed it south, deep into the industrial wasteland of Soto, where the city's glitter faded into rust and concrete dust. It was a place of broken streetlights, chain-link fences, and the distant, echoing barks of feral dogs. The sedan pulled into a defunct warehouse, the kind of place that still had a faded logo from a dot-com-era shipping company on its corrugated tin side. The sign above the bay door read Argent Lantern Logistics. Cade snapped a picture of the license plate and the sign and sent it to Vale. 2 hours later, Rhea found me in the basement. "Vale is handling it," she said. "He's going to the warehouse. You are to stay here until Cade returns to escort you home." "What?" I stood up, dropping the polishing rag. "I'm not a child. I was the one who saw the powder. I'm the one who saw the man. I should be there." "You will be exactly useless," Rhea said, her voice sharp. "You are a bartender. Park, you are not an investigator. You are a liability he is trying to protect. Do not make his job harder." A hot, angry flush crept up my neck. A liability. A burden. The same feeling of uselessness I'd had since the Hearthline lawsuit began. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another text. "We see your bodyguard. He can't watch you forever." I stared at the words, my blood running cold. Then a different feeling replaced the fear rage. I was not going to be a package. I was not going to be a burden. I hit record on my phone's voice memo app. Then I called the number. A gruff voice answered on the first ring. "Yeah." "Stop texting me," I said, my own voice tight but clear. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. The little bartender. "Got some fight in you. You should have just kept wiping the bar. Sweetheart, you and your new boyfriend are in way over your heads." "What do you want?" "We want what's ours. Corsini's choking the life out of this river, and we're just taking our share. Tell him Pier 14 is a bad investment. Tell him to walk away. Or the next time. We won't miss. And maybe we'll start with you." The line clicked dead. I stopped the recording, my finger hovering over the screen. I knew Vale's number. It was the one on the black card, with trembling hands. I attached the audio file and sent it. I added a simple message. "Table 8, the man with the boots. This is what they want." I would be useful. Vale did not go into the warehouse alone. He went with 4 of his best men, and they moved like shadows. They found it empty, but not cold. Cade described the scene to Rhea later, and Rhea, in a rare moment of confidence, relayed it to me. They found a sniper's nest in the rafters, overlooking a crude map of the Nebula Room's interior, with sightlines and escape routes drawn in red marker. On a workbench, They found a high-end thermal scope and a long-range rifle's suppressor, still faintly warm to the touch. The entire workbench was covered in grease, a deliberate attempt to smear any and all fingerprints. But the real clue, the one that mattered, was in a locked filing cabinet. Vale's men did not pick the lock. They tore the cabinet door off its hinges. Inside, beneath a stack of invoices for Argent Lantern Logistics, was a shipping manifest. It was from a company called Silver Ridge Materials, a high-tech chemical supplier. The item listed was 50 kilograms industrial-grade microphosphors. It was the chemical name for the targeting powder. Vale finally came to the bar just before dawn. He looked tired, but his eyes were alive with a cold fire. He found me in the basement, asleep on a stack of linen bags. He did not apologize for waking me. He just crouched down, his expensive coat brushing the dirty floor. He held out his phone. My voice memo was on the screen. Pier 14, he said. His voice was quiet, but it vibrated with contained energy. You did well, June. I sat up, pushing my hair out of my eyes. So it's true. That's what this is about. It's always about the ports, he said, standing up. The Thorn Syndicate are just dogs on a leash. They don't have the brains for this. They're being funded. He tapped his phone. Silver Ridge Materials, Argent Lantern. This is a white-collar play for the most strategic deepwater pier on the Duwamish. They're trying to scare me off the bid. He looked at me, his gaze intense. The text messages, the sedan, the sniper, they were meant to scare you, to make you a problem I couldn't solve, to make me look weak, distracted. He pocketed his phone and offered me a hand. I took it, and he pulled me to my feet easily. His grip was firm and warm. It didn't work, he said, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. They wanted you to be scared. Instead, you got angry. You got smart. He did not let go of my hand. He just looked at me, and a small, dangerous smile touched the corner of his mouth. They want you scared. I'm going to teach them to be scared of you. Cade Romano did not speak on the drive. I was grateful for the silence. I sat in the back of the immaculate black sedan, the scent of expensive leather and faint, clean ozone filling my lungs. We drove away from the industrial grit of Sodo, away from my tiny, graffiti-tagged apartment, and climbed. We climbed into Queen Anne, where the streets were quiet, the hedges were perfectly manicured, and the houses were less like homes and more like statements of power. The house was a box of glass and steel cantilevered over the hillside. It seemed to float, staring out at the entire city. The Space Needle, a tiny toy below us. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen, and it was the most exposed. There were no curtains. Vale was waiting inside. Oh, he was not wearing his coat, just a dark Henley that fit the breadth of his shoulders. The house was minimalist, all white marble and dark wood, but a fire was burning in a massive, floor-to-ceiling concrete fireplace. Cade will bring your things, he said. He did not ask if I wanted to be here. It was a statement. This is where I would be. My brother, my mom, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. They are fine. The Thorns are amateurs. They are focused on you, and by extension, me. They are not looking at Tacoma. Not yet. He gestured to a hallway. Your room. He walked with me. He did not touch me. When he reached the door, he stopped, and I walked past him. He did not crowd my space, but his presence filled the entire house. It was his fortress, and I was now locked inside it. The hours passed. I took a shower in a bathroom larger than my entire apartment, the water pressure a luxury I could not relax enough to enjoy. I felt like a stray cat brought inside a palace still dirty on the inside, expecting to be kicked out. Night fell, and the storm that had been threatening all day finally broke over Seattle. It was not just rain, it was a deluge. The wind slammed against the glass walls, and the entire house, a marvel of engineering, seemed to creak. Vale was in the main room, reading a thick hardcover book, the firelight catching the sharp angles of his face. I sat on the opposite sofa, pretending to read a magazine, my body tense. Then the house groaned, and the lights flickered and died. We were plunged into absolute darkness, save for the orange, flickering light of the fireplace. I inhaled sharply, a small, stupid sound. "The generator will kick on in a minute." Vale's voice came from the blackness, calm and steady. But before the generator could, a flash of white-blue lightning lit the room like a camera flash, followed almost immediately by a crack of thunder so loud it sounded like the sky was being torn in half. I could not help it. I flinched, curling in on myself, my whole body vibrating. "You are cold," he stated. It was not a question. I heard him move. When I looked up, he was a silhouette against the fire. He was shrugging off his own sweater. He did not toss it to me. He walked around the low table and sat on the sofa, not next to me, but near. He draped the heavy wool over my shoulders. It was warm from his body and smelled faintly of wood smoke and something clean and masculine. The warmth was immediate, a heavy, comforting weight. "Thank you." We sat in the orange light, the storm raging outside, the silence inside even louder. "I hate storms," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I always have. When I was a kid, I used to hide in the hall closet." I tried for a small laugh. "Actually, I just hate being trapped. Cade's car, this house, elevators." I looked at him, huddled in his sweater. "What about you? What does the man who has everything fear?" He stared into the flames for a long time. The generator still had not started. "I do not fear things. I fear moments." He turned his head, his dark eyes catching the firelight. "I fear being slow, being 1 second too late. I fear watching something break because I did not get there in time." He was talking about the glass I had knocked from his hand. He was telling me, in his own way, that he was terrified he had almost failed to protect himself. Or perhaps that I had been the one who was not slow. The wind howled, a rising shriek, and then came a sharp beep, beep, beep from the wall of windows, loud and piercing. A small red light flashed on a security panel. Vale was on his feet before the second beep. He did not look at the panel, he looked at me. "The wind," he said, his voice a low command. It triggered the pressure sensor on the glass. Another violent gust hit the house, and the glass wall trembled visibly. It looked like it was breathing. "Get away from the window, June." I was frozen, watching the storm. He did not wait. He crossed the space in 2 strides, grabbed my arm, and pulled me. He did not pull me into the hall. He pulled me against him, turning his own body to shield me from the glass, bracing us against the concrete fireplace. My face was pressed against his chest. I could feel the solid muscle through his shirt, the heat of him. My hands were trapped between us. The alarm was still screaming. The wind was a physical blow against the house. And all I could hear was his heartbeat. It was not fast. It was a steady, heavy thump, thump, thump beneath my ear. It was the calmest thing in the universe. The alarm stopped as abruptly as it began. The wind died down to a roar. The immediate threat of the window shattering, of the storm invading, was over. But we did not move. He was a solid wall of warmth around me. My entire body was pressed against his, and I could feel the slow, even rise and fall of his chest. His breath stirred the hair on my head. Slowly, I tilted my head back to look up at him. His eyes were not on the window, they were on me. The firelight carved his face into light and shadow. He looked intense, and for the first time, unguarded, vulnerable. I should have pushed away. I should have made a joke, thanked him, and retreated to my side of the room. I did not. I just watched him. He lowered his head, slowly, giving me every opportunity to turn away, to flinch, to say no. His gaze dropped from my eyes to my mouth. When his lips finally touched mine, it was not a collision, it was a discovery. It was impulse reading, almost hesitant. He was testing, asking a question without words. I did not pull back. I breathed out a shaky sigh, and that was all the answer he needed. The kiss deepened. It was slow and sure, soft and overwhelming. It was not the desperate, frantic kiss of a cheap romance. It was a conversation. It was the tension of the last 3 days, the fear, the adrenaline, the poisoning, the text messages, the shared danger, all melting into this one impossible moment. His hand, which had been on my arm, slid up to my back. It rested between my shoulder blades, a solid anchoring pressure. It did not roam. It did not demand. It just held me, steadying me. I lifted my hands and rested them on his chest, my fingers curling into the soft fabric of his shirt. I leaned into him, and he took my weight. I felt his pulse quicken beneath my palm. I shifted, pressing closer, and he answered by tilting his head, his other hand coming up to cup my jaw, his thumb stroking the skin just below my ear. It was a gesture of profound tenderness. I tilted my head, breaking the kiss but not the contact. I rested my forehead against his neck, just below his jaw, breathing him in. Smoke. His skin. The storm. I closed my eyes, listening to the steady, strong beat of his pulse, so close it felt like it was inside my own head. A loud thunk came from the hallway, followed by the hum of electronics. The generator had finally kicked on. Dim, recessed lights glowed to life, illuminating the room in a soft, modern glow, breaking the spell of the fire. We both flinched. We pulled apart, but not far. A small, breathless laugh escaped me. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed his face. "I am not as weak as they think I am," I whispered, my voice thick. "I know," he said, his voice a low rumble. His hand was still on my back. "I know you are not, but I am choosing to stand in the rain for you, Juniper." We stood there for another minute. The kiss hung in the air between us, a new and dangerous truth. He looked at me, his expression serious again. He took my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. He kissed me again, just once. Deep and slow, a confirmation of the first, he held my gaze, his thumb rubbing the back of my hand. Then he stepped back, putting a small, respectful distance between us. He did not let go of my hand. "I want this," he said, his voice rough. "But I want it to be right, the right way, the right time. Not when you are scared, not when you are in my house for protection." I looked at him, and the last shred of my fear of him evaporated, replaced by a deep, aching trust that made no logical sense. I nodded, unable to speak. He lifted my hand, studied my cracked knuckles, and squeezed my fingers. He tapped my hand twice, a quick, firm double tap. "Okay," he asked. I squeezed back and tapped his hand twice in return. "Okay." He smiled, that small, private smile again. He brought my hand to his lips, brushing a soft kiss over my knuckles. Then he tapped my hand 3 times. "What's that for?" I whispered. "That," he said, finally letting me go, "is for when you need me. 3 taps, I will come." The morning after the storm, the glass walls of the Queen Anne house were not a vulnerability. They were a vantage point. The intimacy of the night before had settled, not into awkwardness, but into a quiet, humming partnership. When Vale met me in the kitchen, the look he gave me was no longer just protective. It was appreciative. He saw a partner, not a liability. His office was a testament to his mind, overlooking the entire port complex. Cade was there, along with Rhea. They were in a war. "Gideon Vale," Vale said, his voice flat. He was standing in front of a massive digital map of the Duwamish waterway. He's using the Thorn Syndicate as a blunt instrument to create a crisis of confidence. He wants Pier 14. "The bait container is ready," Cade reported. "We loaded it with scrap metal, but the manifest says high-value medical diagnostic equipment. It is scheduled to move from Pier 9 tonight." Vale nodded. "The tracker." "It is a soft data tracker, integrated with the locking mechanism. If the container is opened without the encrypted key, the internal drive will corrupt itself in less than 10 seconds. But it will ping its location and the ID of the tool used to breach it first." I had been listening from the doorway. "That will tell you where they are," I said, stepping into the room. All three of them turned to look at me. It will not tell you who they are, not the specific man who puts his hands on the lock. Vale raised an eyebrow, a silent invitation to continue. The powder, I said. The targeting powder from Silver Ridge Materials. They must sell a non-toxic version, an adhesive or a tracer, something harmless that sticks. Vale's eyes lit up. Go on. You dust the external locking bars, the handles, the keypad. Whoever breaches that container will get it on their gloves, their hands, their clothes. It will be invisible in the dark, but under a simple UV light, they will light up. It is an invisible ink that you cannot wash off quickly. It will last for at least 72 hours. Your men just need to start scanning. There was a long silence. Rhea looked impressed. Cade permitted himself a small, thin smile. That is not just smart, Juniper, Vale said, his voice soft. That is tactical. Make the call. Get the powder. While Cade and his team prepared the trap, Vale and Rhea dug into the entity that had facilitated the attack. Argent Lantern Logistics, Rhea said, tapping a tablet. They filed for incorporation 6 months ago. They have no other clients, yet they have a full payroll. They have been receiving steady, 7-figure wire transfers from an offshore holding company. And, Vale added, Argent Lantern was the same firm I hired to upgrade the security cameras at Pier 9, the same cameras that went blind for exactly 7 minutes. They were playing both sides, I whispered. They took your money to install the cameras, and they took Gideon Vale's money to create the blind spot. He needed a deniable asset, Vale said. A cutout. He's clean. The thorns are dirty. Argent Lantern is the laundromat in the middle. Vale's mind was already 3 moves ahead. He wants the pier. He's using violence to scare me off the bid. He thinks I will retaliate with violence, proving I am the animal he says I am, and the city will deny my lease. So, we will not use violence. He picked up his phone. I'm moving up the timeline. Get Director Evans at the Cascadia Maritime Adjudication Bureau on the line. Tell him I am invoking the imminent security risk clause in my current lease. I am petitioning for an emergency review. Rhea frowned. What does that do? It forces a public auction for the Pier 14 lease. Immediately, Vale said, a cold smile touching his lips. Gideon Vale wants to operate from the shadows. I am going to flood the stage with light. If he wants the pier, he has to step out and bid for it himself. He has to show his hand. While Vale set his legal trap, I felt the familiar itch of uselessness. I cannot stay here, I said. I am not a prisoner. You are a target, Vale countered, his tone leaving no room for argument. And I am your best source of information, I shot back. Right now, Gideon Vale and the Thorns think I am terrified. They think I am hidden away. If I go back to the Nebula room, it sends a message. It says you are not scared. It says the threat is handled. It shows control. I saw the denial forming on his lips, and I cut him off. And I know these people. I know the low-level thugs, the accountants, the ones who talk too much when they are trying to impress someone. Let me be your ears. Cade can be half a block away, but I am not a piece of glass. Vale, stop handling me like one. The silence stretched. He was at war with himself. His duty to protect me fighting his newfound respect for my mind. One night, he finally conceded. Cade will be on your 6. You hear anything that sounds wrong, you tap your wrist 3 times, the signal, and you are out. Returning to the Nebula room was surreal. The purple lights, the thumping bass. It felt like a lifetime ago. Rhea put me on the floor, and I played the part. I was shaky, pale, and I made sure to accidentally drop a tray of glasses near the table where the Thorns were sitting. They laughed, but they were not alone. A man in an expensive, slim-fit suit was with them, sipping a 25-year-old scotch. He was not a docker. He looked like he belonged in a high-rise. He looked like Gideon Vale's world. I moved to wipe a nearby table, keeping my head down, playing the role of the broken bartender. Gideon is not worried, the suit was saying, his voice slick with arrogance. Corsini is old world. He thinks in terms of containers and crews. Gideon thinks in terms of policy. A Thorn member looked confused. Policy. The suit laughed. The Green Supply Chain Initiative. It is already in committee at the state level. Gideon is the primary sponsor. Once it passes, any cargo coming through the Puget Sound will require green certification. Guess who will be the only approved auditor? My blood ran cold. Corsini's whole operation, his trucks, his ships, his warehouses, they will not pass inspection. The suit boasted, taking a sip. Gideon is not just trying to take one pier. He's going to legislate Corsini's entire enterprise out of existence. The attack was just to accelerate the process, rattle the king. I fled to the kitchen, my hands shaking for real. He was not just trying to steal a pier. He was trying to suffocate the entire Corsini consortium. Gideon Vale, the city's green tech humanitarian, was staging a corporate coup under the guise of environmentalism. I relayed everything to Vale in the car on the way back to Queen Anne. He was quiet for a long time. He did not hire the Thorns to hit my cargo, Vale said, his voice dangerously low. He hired them to hit me, personally, to paint me as a thug, to make me look unstable. So when he makes his legal play, the city and the feds will be eager to replace me with a clean alternative. Just then, Cade's phone buzzed. He read the text. The bait container was hit an hour ago at the Argent Lantern warehouse. The data drive corrupted, but not before pinging. We got 2 of them. Local PD picked them up for a broken taillight 10 minutes ago. Our inside man ran a UV light over them during booking. They lit up like a billboard. Vale assembled the dossier, the Silver Ridge Manifest for the Industrial Phosphors, the invoices from Argent Lantern, the 7-minute blind spots in his own security, the positive UV identification of the Thorn members, and the audio recording I had secretly made of the accountants boasting at the bar. This is not for the police, Vale decided. This is too big. They will bury it in committee. Who then? Rhea asked. The FMIB, Vale said. Rhea scoffed. The Federal Maritime Integrity Bureau, Vale. They are a brand new agency. They are baby teeth. They have no political power, no real jurisdiction. Exactly, Vale said. They are new, which means they are ambitious. They are not on Gideon Vale's payroll. And they are the only agency whose entire mandate covers interstate maritime commerce. This is an antitrust case disguised as a gang war. We are going to hand the FMIB the case that makes their careers. He sent the encrypted file for 48 hours. There was silence. Then, the counterattack. It was not a bullet. It was a broadcast. I was watching the morning news. There he was, Gideon Vale, standing in front of the Space Needle, looking earnest and concerned. The chyron read, Corsini blocking Seattle's green future. It is a tragedy, Gideon said to the reporter, his face a mask of civic duty. We have entities in this city, old-world criminal enterprises, that are resisting progress. They use violence and intimidation to protect their polluting, outdated methods. The Corsini Consortium is holding our city's future hostage. Vale, standing next to me, went rigid. The broadcast was a declaration of war. He was not running. He was using his public image as a shield and a sword. Vale picked up his phone, his eyes black with controlled fury. Cade, we are going to pay Mr. Vale a visit. Now. No? The word was out of my mouth before I could stop it. Vale turned to me, his look thunderous. I swallowed, forcing my voice to be steady. This is the trap? This is what he wants. He's baiting you. He's poking the bear, waiting for you to come out with claws and fangs. He wants you to be the monster he is describing. The second you show up at his office, you prove him right. You lose the war. He is slandering my family, Vale bit out. Your family's name is already slander to him, I insisted, stepping in front of him. That is his entire strategy. Do not fight him on his terms. You sent the FMIB the evidence. You sent them the legal case. Let them be the weapon. Let the truth, the real truth, do the work. You are playing a chess game. Vale, do not flip the board over just because he called you a name. He stared at me, his jaw working, the muscle pulsing. The desire for immediate physical retribution was a palpable thing, a heat rolling off him. I put my hand on his arm. His muscles were iron. "Wait," I whispered. He looked from my face to my hand on his arm. The fire in his eyes did not die, but it banked. He took a deep, slow breath and set his phone down on the counter. "We wait," he agreed, his voice a low growl, the fragile truce held for one day. Vale was a caged panther prowling the glass house, his phone buzzing every 5 minutes with updates from his legal team and the FMIB. He kept his word. He did not move against Gideon Vale. So Gideon moved against me. It was decided I could not stay at the Queen Anne house. It was too visible. A glass box waiting to be targeted. Cade was tasked with moving me to a more secure, undisclosed apartment in Ballard. Vale would follow 30 minutes behind in a separate car, a decoy maneuver. We were on the Spokane Street Bridge, the high concrete pass that spans the industrial gut of the city. When it happened, the traffic was moderate. Cade was driving at a steady 40 miles per hour, a heavy-duty black pickup truck, the kind with illegal lift kits and reinforced bumpers, materialized behind us. He came fast, weaving through traffic like a missile. "We have a tail," Cade said, his voice perfectly flat. He checked his mirror. "He's not slowing down." The truck slammed into our rear bumper. The sedan fishtailed, the sound of screeching tires and crunching metal echoing over the bridge. I was thrown forward, my seatbelt locking painfully across my chest. Cade corrected the skid, his hands expert on the wheel. "June, stay down." The truck hit us again, harder, this time. It did not hit us from behind. It pulled alongside, forcing Cade to swerve right. The concrete barrier of the bridge rushed up to meet my window. "He is pushing us," Cade grunted, fighting the wheel as the massive truck ground against the side of our car, showering the road with sparks. He was trying to push us over the edge, into the Duwamish River 50 feet below. Cade yanked the wheel left, slamming our car into the truck, using its own momentum against it, but the truck was too heavy. It pinned us, scraping us along the concrete barrier. The sound was a deafening metallic scream. Just as I thought the barrier would break, a second car appeared, a black blur in my side mirror. It was Cade's identical chase car, the one that was supposed to be a mile behind us. It did not slow down. It accelerated, ramming the pickup truck from the rear quarter panel, a perfect pit maneuver. The truck spun out, its rear end whipping around, and slammed nose first into the central divider. Our car was free, but we were not safe. Before Cade could accelerate, a man in a black ski mask jumped from the passenger side of the now wrecked truck. He was holding a tire iron. He ran at my door. I screamed as he raised the iron and brought it down on my window. The tempered glass spider-webbed but held. "June," Cade yelled. The man raised the iron again, his eyes, dark and furious, locking on mine through the mask. He swung. The window exploded inward in a shower of tiny glass cubes. I threw my arms up, but not before I felt a sharp sting on my temple. The man reached inside, his gloved hand grabbing for the door handle. I did not think. I reacted. I still had the pepper spray Rhea had given me. My hand shot from my pocket, and I sprayed the entire canister directly into the man's masked face. He roared, a wet, choking sound, and recoiled, clawing at his eyes. That was when the third car arrived. Vale's personal sedan screeched to a halt, blocking all 3 lanes of the bridge. He was out of the car before it had even stopped moving. He was not wearing a coat, just his shirt sleeves, and he had a gun in his hand, held low and steady. He did not run. He walked, fast and lethal, his entire focus on the man clawing at his face. The man saw him, saw the gun, and his survival instinct overrode the pain. He scrambled back to his truck, which was already reversing, its engine screaming. Vale did not shoot. He let them go. He lowered the weapon, his eyes finding me in the shattered window of Cade's car. I heard Cade on his phone, his voice clipped and furious. "Corsini is moving. Asset is compromised. Secondary location is scrubbed. We are going to Ballard." Vale was at my door. Yanking it open, the glass fell away. "Get out, now!" He did not wait. He half pulled, half lifted me from the car, his hand tangled in my jacket. He did not look at my face. He just bundled me into the back seat of his own car, shoving me down onto the leather. "Stay down," he commanded. He got in the driver's seat and peeled away, leaving Cade in the other car to deal with the wreckage and the inevitable police. The entire incident, from the first impact to Vale's arrival, had taken maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds. It was just enough time for me to understand that his protection network was not a theory. It was a terrifyingly efficient machine. He drove to Ballard, to a nondescript gray apartment building that looked like 1,000 others. The safe house was a corner unit on the 3rd floor. It was clean, sterile, and utterly impersonal. It smelled like fresh paint and new carpet. The second he locked the deadbolt, the adrenaline that had been holding me together evaporated. I began to shake. It started in my hands and spread, a violent, uncontrollable tremor that rattled my teeth. I could not feel my legs. I slid down the wall to the floor, my whole body convulsing with shock. Vale was in front of me in an instant. He did not ask if I was okay. He did not fuss. He just dropped to his knees, came up behind me, and wrapped his arms around my torso from the back. He pulled me against his chest, my back flat against his front. He was a solid wall of heat. "Breathe, Juniper," he commanded, his voice a low rumble in my ear. "Breathe with me." He took a long, slow breath, forcing my lungs to expand with his. In. He held it and I held it, my body rigid. "Out," he said, exhaling slowly. In. 1, 2, 3. Out. 1, 2, 3. He kept counting, his arms a vice around me, holding me together, forcing my frantic, gasping breaths to match his steady, calm rhythm. We sat there on the kitchen floor, my back to his chest, his chin resting on the top of my head. For 5 minutes. We just breathed. His arms were an iron cage, an armor against the world. I had never felt safer in my entire life. Finally, the shaking subsided, leaving me exhausted and limp in his arms. "I am okay," I whispered. My voice was hoarse. He loosened his grip but did not let go. "I know." He helped me to my feet. I stumbled, and he steadied me. His hands on my waist. I saw myself in the small mirror by the door. My hair was wild, full of tiny glass particles that glittered like diamonds, and there was a thin, dark line of dried blood tracking from my hairline down my temple. The sting I had felt. A shard of glass must have cut me. I reached up to touch it, my fingers trembling. "Do not," Vale said, his voice quiet. He gently caught my wrist. He led me into the sterile white bathroom, sat me on the edge of the tub, and retrieved a first aid kit from the cabinet. He wet a cloth with warm water. He stood between my knees, his body close, blocking out the sterile room. He was so careful. His large, calloused hands I knew could break things, were impossibly gentle. He tilted my chin up with one finger and began to dab at the cut, cleaning away the blood. His eyes were a storm. They were not calm. They were black with a cold, precise fury. He was angry at them for touching me, and he was angry at himself for letting it happen. But his hand was steady. He was restraining that rage, terrified that if he let it out, he would scare me. "It is not deep," he said, his voice rough. "It does not need stitches." He finished cleaning it and applied a small butterfly bandage, his fingers brushing my skin. I just watched his face, watching the war he was fighting with himself. As he stepped back, his phone, which he had placed on the counter, buzzed. It was not a call. It was a text. He picked it up. I watched his expression change. The controlled fury evaporated, replaced by something frozen, something far more dangerous. He did not hide the screen. He turned it and showed it to me. It was an anonymous number. There was only an image. It was a photograph, clear and high resolution. It was my mother, in her Sunday best, holding her church bulletin. She was standing on the steps of her little parish in Koreatown, smiling at someone. The person she was smiling at was the one taking the picture. The threat was no longer just about me. They had escalated. They had crossed a line. Vale did not speak. He just dialed a number. Activate Lucia protocols. Full family extraction. Tacoma, yes, now. He hung up. "What is that?" I whispered, my voice shaking again. "The Corsini family has resources," he said, his voice a flat, deadly calm. "We have protected compounds. My mother stays at one, the St. Lucia Temple. It is secure. Your mother will be moved there within the hour." I slid off the tub, my stomach churning with a new kind of sickness. This is my fault. Oh God, Vale, I brought this to her. I did this. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip hard, forcing me to look at him. "No," he said, his voice slow and deliberate. "You listen to me. Guilt is a tool. It is what the weak-minded use to control people. It is the weapon of cowards like Gideon Vale. You did not do this. He did. Do not give him that power. Do not let him use your conscience against you." A knock came at the door. Vale went rigid, his hand moving inside his jacket, but then a familiar voice called out, "It is just me. Vale, let me in." Vale opened the door. Rhea stood there, her silver hair damp from the rain, her face grim. "I heard about the bridge," she said, walking in. "I'm glad you are alive. Park." She looked at Vale. "And I am guessing you just got a message about your mother." "How do you know?" I asked. Rhea let out a long, tired breath. "Because I know how they work. I know how Argent Lantern thinks." Vale turned to her. "What did you say?" Rhea looked him dead in the eye. Argent Lantern. Before it was called that, it was Argent Security. And 20 years ago, before I worked for you, I worked for them. I was their lead analyst. My jaw dropped. Vale just stared at her. "They were not always like this," she said, a deep shame in her voice. "They were legitimate, but they got greedy. I left when they started taking morally gray contracts. I owed you, Vale. Your father took me in when I had nowhere else to go. He gave me the Nebula room, a clean start. I have been trying to pay that debt, and now I am going to—" She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a single, old-fashioned key attached to a plastic tag. "Gideon Vale is smart," Rhea said. "He has digital firewalls, encrypted servers. But Argent Lantern is old school. They keep hard backups, physical proof. Their old servers, the ones that log all camera activity, are not at their new warehouse. They are in their old subterranean storage unit, the one I used to manage." She threw the key onto the kitchen counter. It landed with a metallic click. "That is the key," Rhea said. "That is where you will find the unedited footage, the 7-minute gap, the proof that links Gideon's money, through Lantern, directly to the sniper on that roof. It is the legal bullet you have been waiting for." The old storage unit was subterranean, smelling of damp concrete, ozone, and decay. It was a digital tomb. Rhea, Cade, and I worked under the beam of a single, powerful flashlight. Cade bypassed the physical security on the server rack while Rhea, her fingers flying over an old-fashioned keyboard, navigated a DOS-based system that looked ancient. "I am in," she murmured, searching the logs for the Nebula room, external cameras, river view, cross-referencing timestamp, 10:07 p.m., the night of the attack. A green line of text appeared. Error, Suez_camera_feed_04, data_LAG, 07M_00S. My breath caught. There it is, the 7-minute gap. "It is not just a gap," Rhea said, her voice tight with triumph. "This is the raw log. It is not an error, it is a pause command, manually triggered by an external admin key. And the log shows the admin key was Argent Lantern, primary user, Gideon Vale." Cade was already working on the next cabinet, this one a standard metal filing system. He did not pick the lock. He used a thin piece of metal to pop the tumblers in 2 seconds. Inside, we found everything. the hard copies, the paper trail that Gideon thought was long since shredded. There was a sheaf of invoices from Silver Ridge Materials, billing Argent Lantern for photoluminescent phosphor powder. There was a roof maintenance contract for the cannery building opposite the Nebula Room, dated the day before the attack, signed by an Argent Lantern project manager. Best of all, there was a string of leaked internal emails, printed out. One read, G.V. is adamant the powder must be invisible to the naked eye but flare on thermal. He wants zero link back to Silver Ridge. It was a perfect, undeniable chain. Gideon Vale to Argent Lantern to the thorns to the sniper to the powder on the glass. It was a fingerprint clear as day. We took the entire haul back to the Ballard safe house. We laid it all out on the sterile dining table. It was a legal kill shot. Vale looked at the pile of evidence, his face grim. Cade, get the cleanup team. I want the Argent warehouse burned. I want the thorns rounded up. And I want Gideon Vale. No, I said it again. But this time, my voice did not shake. He turned to me, his eyes full of that cold fire. June. He sent men to kill you. He put your mother in the crosshairs. The game is over. The game is not over, I argued, stepping between him and the door. This, I slapped my hand on the pile of papers, is how we win. Not by burning a building, not by rounding people up. That is your world, Vale. That is the world he wants you to be. You do that. You are the criminal he paints you as. This is the proof. This is the law. The law is slow, he growled. I do not care. My voice rose, echoing in the small room. I have spent my entire life trying to be a good person. My family is drowning because of a legal scam. And I have been breaking my back to fix it the right way. Then I fell into your world. I have been lied to. I have been hunted. I have been shot at. I need this, Vale. He stopped, his anger faltering, replaced by confusion. You need what? I need to win this my way, just once. I need to know that the law, the real law, can still work. I need to know that I am still Juniper Park, the girl who is going to be a lawyer and not just a mafia boss's girl, please. I looked at him, my hands clenched. Let me win this one time with the law. Let me believe I am still a good person. He stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. The muscle in his jaw worked. He was at war with every instinct he had. He finally gave a short, sharp nod. One chance, you do it your way. I packaged everything, every invoice, every email, every log file. I sent the encrypted bundle to the Federal Maritime Integrity Bureau, directly to the new agent we had been in contact with. Her name was Tamsin Crow. She called back 10 minutes later. Her voice was young, sharp, and had zero patience. This is a goddamn gift, Miss Park. You just handed me the keys to the kingdom. So you will move on him, I asked, hope surging in my chest. Whoa, slow down, right? Agent Crow said. This is phenomenal. But Gideon Vale's legal team is not just good, they are gods. They will bury us in motions. They will claim entrapment, illegal search, chain of custody. Ria's testimony about the key inadmissible. This is the map, but I still need to dig up the treasure legally. I need to get my own warrants. What do you need? I need time. I can use this to get a warrant for Silver Ridge's financials. If I can link Vale's offshore accounts to Silver Ridge, then I can link him to the powder. But I need time. Give me 24 hours. 24 hours, I repeated, looking at Vale. He looked like he was going to explode, but he nodded. You have 24 hours. Gideon Vale did not wait 24 hours. His counterattack came that afternoon. It was not a text. It was not a car. It was a media bomb. My phone started buzzing with alerts. Ria's did too. A video had just been leaked to every major Seattle news blog. It was security footage from the Nebula Room. The title, plastered everywhere, read, Bartender attacks powerful Seattle businessman. I watched it, my stomach turning to ice. It was the night of the attack, shot from a high-angle camera behind the bar. It was silent. You could see me, a grainy figure, vaulting the counter. You could see Vale, looking surprised. You could see me slapping the glass from his hand in what looked like a moment of pure, unhinged aggression. The video cut to black the second the glass hit the floor. There was no sound. No, don't drink that. There was no context. There was no laser, no iridescent powder. It just looked like I had assaulted him. The comments section was a sewer. Who is this crazy girl? She should be arrested. Probably a psycho ex-girlfriend. Corsini should sue her into the ground. In one 10-second, expertly edited clip, Gideon Vale had turned me from a victim into a villain. He was controlling the narrative. Vale's face was white. He picked up his phone. "I'm calling my media team. I can have this story killed in 1 hour. I will pay every blog in this city to pull it." "No," I said, my voice hollow. "You cannot. It is already out. If you try to kill it, it will just look like a cover-up. It will make you look guilty." "So what?" he demanded. "You will be crucified." "It is a stick that hits you in the back situation," I whispered. "A stick that hits both ends. He used a video to lie, so I will use one to tell the truth." I grabbed my phone. I went into the sterile bathroom, the only room without a window, and hit record. I did not use filters. I did not edit. I just spoke. One single take. My hair was a mess. The butterfly bandage was stark on my temple. "My name is June Park," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "You are seeing a video of me. It looks like I'm attacking a man. I am not. I am a bartender. I saw something wrong with a drink. I saw a man, a customer, who was about to drink something that I believed would kill him. I did not have time to talk. I did not have time to ask questions. I only had 1 second to act, so I acted." I looked directly into the camera. I am not an attacker. I am not crazy. I am the person who saw someone about to die, and I did not let it happen. You can call me whatever you want, but if you were in that seat, you would be glad I was there. I did not do it to be a hero. I did it because it was right. I stopped the recording. I uploaded it. I did not add a caption. I just let it go. For an hour, nothing. Then the comments started. First, a few. "She looks terrified. The cut on her head. Where did that come from? Why would the original video be silent?" Then it became a flood. My clip was shared, reposted, and then stitched next to the original attack video. The narrative changed, almost instantly. She saved his life. The girl who screamed, "Don't drink that," that became my name. The hashtag #Don'tDrink that started trending in Seattle. My story, raw and real, was more powerful than his slick, edited lie. I had taken his weapon and turned it back on him. Vale watched the tide turn, a look of profound, stunned respect on his face. The next morning, Gideon Vale panicked. He called an emergency press conference on the steps of his green supply chain headquarters. Vale and I watched on the Safe House television. Gideon was at the podium, his face a mask of earnest concern. "The people of Seattle are being manipulated," he said, his voice ringing with false sincerity. "We have criminal organizations, led by men like Valerio Corsini, who are using media tricks to silence those of us fighting for a cleaner, greener future. They are using sympathetic pawns, troubled young women, to spread disinformation. I will not be intimidated. The green economy will not bow to criminals." I grabbed a legal pad and started writing. "What are you doing?" Vale asked. "He is lying," I said, not looking up. "He is contradicting his own timeline. He said criminal organizations in the plural. He said media tricks. He's projecting. He's telling us exactly what he did. I am taking notes. Every contradiction, every lie, every timeline inconsistency. And I'm sending it all to Agent Crow." Just as I finished, Vale's phone buzzed. It was Agent Crow. Vale put it on speaker. "We got it," Crow said, her voice electric. "The Silver Ridge accounts, the warrant came through. We have a direct wire transfer from Vale's offshore fund to Silver Ridge for consulting fees. In the exact amount of the phosphor shipment. We have him, Vale. We have the bastard." Vale closed his eyes, a long, slow breath leaving his body. The tension in the room did not break. It just changed. It was the silence before the final, massive thunderclap, The legal bullet was now loaded. That night, we did not go to the bedroom. We were too tired, too wired. We ended up on the cheap, sterile sofa, my legal pad on the floor. I was leaning against him, his arm around me, my head on his shoulder. We were just listening to the sound of the city, the sound of a war we were about to win. I must have fallen asleep, because I woke up in the dark, still on the sofa. Vale was asleep too, his head tilted back against the cushion, his breathing deep and even. He was still holding me, his grip secure even in sleep. It was the first time in a week I had not felt like prey. For a few brief, silent hours, we were just two people on a couch. The storm was coming, but for this moment, we were in the eye. The legal victory landed like a controlled demolition. At dawn, Agent Tamsin Crow, armed with the Silver Ridge warrants, led a full FMIB tactical team in a raid on the Argent Lantern headquarters. It was not a quiet entry. They went in hard, seizing servers, hard drives, and every piece of paper in the building. Simultaneously, a second team picked up the talkative accountant from his high-rise condo. The man who had boasted about Gideon's plan at the Nebula Room was suddenly very, very quiet. "We have him," Crow told Vale over the phone, her voice buzzing with energy. "We have the servers. We have the accountant. He's singing. Vale. He's terrified of being looped into a domestic terrorism charge. He's giving us Gideon Vale on a silver platter." Vale hung up the phone, and the relief in the room was so thick you could breathe it. He looked at me, a rare, genuine smile spreading across his face. "You did it, Juniper, your way." The celebration lasted exactly 10 minutes. Vale's personal phone rang, the one that did not have Agent Crow's number. He answered it, his smile fading, replaced by a mask of cold stone. "Who is this?" he said. I could hear a rough, synthesized voice from the speaker. "We do not care about the feds. We do not care about your accountant. We have your silver-haired manager." My blood turned to ice. "Rhea. We have the old woman," the voice crackled. "And you have our server logs, the backups, the ones your girl found." "What do you want?" Vale's voice was deadly calm. "A trade. The logs for the woman. You know, Harbor 27, the old cannery pier. 1 hour. You come alone. You bring the hard drives, or she swims." The line went dead. Vale looked at the phone, then at Cade, who was already checking his weapons. "Cade, you stay here," and Vale commanded, grabbing his coat. "This is on me. I go alone." "Like hell you do," I said, stepping in front of the door. He did not even look at me. "June, move. This is not a negotiation." "She is not your manager. Vale, not really. She is my friend. They took her because of me. They are desperate, and they think I am your weakness. If I am not there, they will kill her the second they have the drives." "She is right," Cade said quietly. Vale's head snapped toward him, shocked. "They are not Thorns. Boss, not just Thorns. This is Gideon's private security, the ones left over from Lantern. They are professionals. They will not leave a witness. They expect you to come alone. They do not expect her." Vale looked at me, his eyes searching my face, seeing the fear, but also seeing the absolute unbending resolve. The dynamic had changed. I was not the girl he was protecting. I was the one who had to finish the fight. "You are not a shield," he said, his voice rough. "No," I said, zipping up my jacket. "I am a weapon. You taught them to be scared of me. Let's not disappoint them." He stared at me for 1 second longer, then nodded. "Cade, 2-perch overwatch, non-lethal, unless she gives the signal. You are on comms. Give her an earpiece." Harbor 27 was a skeleton of rust and rotten wood, jutting out into the gray, choppy water of the Sound. The rain had started again, a cold, miserable drizzle. Cade set up in the rafters of a derelict warehouse 200 yards away, his rifle providing a sightline to the entire pier. Vale and his team moved in a silent, flanking perimeter, disappearing into the shadows of the containers. I was the one who walked out onto the pier. I had a small, flesh-colored earpiece. "I see you. June." Cade's voice was a calm whisper in my ear. There are 4 of them, 2 on the north side, 2 with the hostage at the end of the pier. They are not thorns. They are geared body armor. "Vale," I whispered. "I am in position," Vale's voice answered, so close he could have been standing next to me. "I'm 40 yards to your left. I have eyes on Rhea. She is alive." I saw them, 2 men in black tactical gear, holding Rhea between them. Her silver hair was plastered to her head, but she was standing. The man in charge, the one who had to be the leader, stepped forward. I held up the hard drive. "You wanted this, you can have it." "Just bring it here, little girl," he scoffed. "And tell your boyfriend we are not stupid. We see the glint from the warehouse. You have 1 minute or we all go in the water." "Cade, they made you," I whispered. "I know," Cade said. "It does not matter. They cannot see Vale." I took a step forward. "I will meet you halfway. Let her go first." The leader laughed. "That is not how this works." "Gideon is gone," I said, my voice rising over the rain, the calmest I had ever felt. "The FMIB has your accountant. They have the servers. This drive," I held it up, "is just a copy. It is worthless. But you are not." The man paused. "What did you say?" "I said Gideon Vale is finished. He's a white-collar criminal. The first thing he is going to do when the feds come for him is cut his losses. And you," I pointed at him, "are his biggest, loudest, most violent loss. He's going to feed you to the wolves to save himself. He's already gone." I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. "We are offering you a one-time deal," I continued, my voice steady. "Hand her over. We give you a boat, moored on the south side of this pier. We give you a 30-minute head start and a clear route out of the Sound. You take the deal. You live. You hurt her. Vale will dismantle you. Your choice." The man stared at me, his mind racing. He was cornered. He smiled, a cruel, cold smile. "You are smart, but not smart enough." He motioned to his man, but Rhea, standing between them, did something. It was tiny. She stumbled, just a fraction, and threw her left hand out to catch her balance. It was a clear, unmistakable signal. Left trap. "Cavale, left side. She is signaling a trap," I said into my mic. "I see it." Vale's voice was ice. At the same instant, I threw myself to the right, landing hard on the wet planks of the pier. A bright, electric blue flash erupted where I had been standing. A sizzling sound, followed by the pop of a high-voltage charge, a tripwire, a cattle prod wired to a battery. It would not have killed me, but it would have put me down, screaming. The leader raised his weapon. "Stupid!" He never finished the sentence. Vale did not make a sound. He exploded from the shadows of a stack of crab pots. He did not go for the leader. He went for the 2 men holding Rhea. Cade's voice was in my ear. "Do not engage. June, he is moving." Vale did not use his gun. It was a blur of brutal, efficient motion. He was a practitioner of a different kind of violence. He collided with the first man, his hand striking the man's wrist. I heard a wet, sharp snap of bone. The man's gun clattered to the deck. Vale did not pause. His other hand cupped the man's elbow from behind, and he drove his knee into the joint, hyperextending it. The man screamed, a high, thin sound, and collapsed. The second man turned. Raising his weapon, Vale was too close. He flowed under the man's arm, locking the wrist, twisting it in a circle that should not be possible. The man was forced to his knees, a single, precise strike to the side of the man's neck, and he went limp. It took less than 10 seconds. The leader and the fourth man were stunned, their weapons tracking Vale, but he was already moving, using the man on his knees as a shield. "Cade," Vale said, his voice perfectly calm, non-lethal, now. I heard 2 high-pitched thwips from the warehouse, like a staple gun. We did not go back to the sterile safe house in Ballard. Cade drove us back to Queen Anne, the glass house floating on the hill, a beacon against the dark. Rainy night. Rhea had been taken by a different car to one of Vale's other properties. Safe and sound. The moment the heavy front door clicked shut, the silence of the house rushed in to replace the scream of the wind on the pier. I stood in the marble foyer, dripping water onto the pristine floor. Cade and Vale were speaking in low tones by the door, discussing the men who had been taken down, the boat they had provided for the fleeing mercenaries, the new security rotation. I was not listening, I was just empty. All the adrenaline, all the courage I had manufactured, all the ice-cold resolve I had used to face down a trained killer, evaporated. It left a vacuum, and every terror of the last week rushed in to fill it. The glass window I had shattered, the red dot of the sniper's rifle, the man's face at my car window, the picture of my mother, Rhea, being held at gunpoint. My knees buckled. I did not faint, but I could not stand. I slid down the wall and sat on the cold floor. And for the first time, I broke. It was not a loud, dramatic sob. It was a silent, shuddering collapse. The courage I had shown all day had been borrowed, and the payment was due. The tears came, hot and silent, a release of tension so profound it felt like my bones were dissolving. I heard Vale's footsteps. He dismissed Cade, and the front door clicked shut again, leaving us alone. I expected him to say something, to tell me it was over, that I was safe. I expected him to be the boss. Instead, he just sat on the floor in front of me, his knees almost touching mine, his expensive suit getting wet from my soaked clothes. He did not touch me. He just sat, a silent witness, giving me the space to fall apart. My wet hair was plastered to my face, strands sticking to my wet cheeks. I tried to push it back, my hands shaking so violently I could not control them. I cannot stop shaking," I whispered, ashamed. Vale leaned forward. He reached up. His movement slow. I flinched, and he froze, his hand in the air. "May I?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. I nodded, my breath catching. His hand did not go to my face. It went to his own wrist, where a simple black elastic band was looped, the kind of thing you use to tie back hair or wrap around a stack of papers. He slipped it off his wrist. Gently, his fingers, which I had seen move with such brutal speed, gathered my wet, tangled hair. He was clumsy. His large, calloused hands were not made for this, but he was so careful. He pulled the strands back from my face, his touch light, his knuckles brushing my temple. I watched his hand. It was shaking. Just a tiny, minute tremor. The man who had faced down 4 armed professionals, the man who had not flinched at a bullet, was shaking as he tried to tie my hair. That small, human detail broke the last of my composure. He looped the elastic, securing my hair in a messy knot at the back of my head. His fingers lingered for a second at the nape of my neck. "Thank you," I whispered. He did not pull away. He cupped my face, his palms warm against my cold, wet skin. His thumbs wiped the tears from under my eyes. He looked at me, his dark eyes filled with something I had not seen before. Not just pride, not just desire. It was a raw, aching tenderness. He kissed me. He leaned in, and this was not the hesitant, questioning kiss from the storm. This was not the brief, confirming kiss of a new understanding. This was a release. This was a statement. It was deep, and it was desperate, and it was all-consuming. I kissed him back with all the terror and relief I had. My hands, which had been trembling in my lap, flew up. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. I did not want space. I did not want distance. I wanted to be anchored. He groaned, a low sound in the back of his throat, and his arms went around me, pulling me off the floor and into his lap. His one hand splayed across my back, holding me against him as if he could absorb my shaking. I could feel his heart hammering against my chest, a frantic, wild rhythm that matched my own. Or maybe it was just my heart, echoing through both of us. His lips were soft and demanding, and I met his pressure, giving back everything I had. It was a kiss that said, "You are alive. I am alive. We are alive." His other hand held my head, his fingers buried in the hair he had just tied, tilting my face to his. Our breaths mingled, hot and short. I could feel the tension in his shoulders, the iron control he always maintained, warring with the sheer, overwhelming need to just hold me. His hand on my back was a solid, grounding weight, tracing the line of my spine, but it went no further. He was a storm, but he was a storm holding himself in check, letting me be the one to set the pace. I pulled back, just an inch, just enough to breathe. Our foreheads touched. We were both panting, our lungs burning. "I do not want to be a debt," I whispered, the words I had been holding back. "I do not want to be the girl you have to protect. I am tired of being someone's liability. Vale." His eyes were closed. He took a long, slow breath. "When I saw you on that pier, when you faced him down, I was not thinking about protection." He opened his eyes, and his gaze was so intense it burned. "When I saw you vault that bar, I thought you were magnificent. When you sent me that audio file, I thought you were brilliant. And when you told me to wait, to let the law work, I knew you were stronger than I am." He shifted, his hand moving from my back to my face, his thumb stroking my jaw. "You are not a debt, Juniper," he said, his voice rough. "You are not a liability. You are a choice. My choice." He kissed me again, slowly this time, a deep, binding promise. We did not move from the floor for a long time. Eventually, the shaking stopped, replaced by a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. He carried me to the long sofa by the fireplace, the one where we had slept the night before. He did not take me to the bedroom. He laid me down and then lay beside me, his back to the room, his front to me, a living shield. He pulled a cashmere throw blanket over us. The rain was lashing against the glass walls, a rhythmic, soothing sound. "I had a sister," he said quietly into the darkness. "Elara. She was younger than me. When I was 19, I was supposed to be watching her. I was arrogant. I thought I was untouchable. Some rivals of my father. They tried to use her to get to him. She was hurt, badly. I stayed perfectly still, listening. She recovered," he continued, his voice tight. "But I did not. I swore I would never be slow again. I would never let my fear make me weak. I built my entire world on one principle: control everything, protect everyone so that moment can never, ever happen again." He shifted, his arm tightening around my waist. "I have not let fear define my life. I let it remind me how to be strong, how to protect." I thought about his words. I thought about the ironclad control, the network of guards, the way he had held me as I shook. "Then protect me in a way that lets me stand up," I whispered, my hand finding his, our fingers lacing together on the pillow. "Do not protect me by standing in front of me. Protect me by letting me stand next to you." He was silent for a moment. He brought my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles. "Shoulder to shoulder," he agreed. A phone buzzed on the coffee table, a harsh, electronic sound that shattered the peace. It was not his. It was mine. Agent Crow. I sat up, Vale rising with me. I put the call on speaker. "I am sorry to call so late, Miss Park." Crow's voice was electric, all business. "But you did it. Your tip on the accountant's contradictions. It gave us the leverage we needed. He just gave us the final piece, a shell corporation. Gideon Vale made a fake wire transfer from Silver Ridge to Argent Lantern, and then back to himself, to make it look like a refund. He was covering his tracks, but he just created a perfect, undeniable loop of money laundering. We have the transfer codes. We have it all." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means the City Council's emergency hearing on the Pier 14 lease, which Gideon himself called to have Corsini's bid thrown out, is happening tomorrow at 10 a.m., and we will be there, with warrants." I looked at Vale. His face was calm, but his eyes were blazing. "Thank you, Agent Crow," I said, and ended the call. The room was silent again, but the air was different. It was not the peace of the storm's eye. It was the sharp, clean silence before a battle. Vale stood up and offered me his hand. I took it, and he pulled me to my feet. He did not pull me into an embrace. He just stood there, holding my hand, his partner. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice a low, final promise. The curtain falls. The city council hearing room was packed. It felt like a show trial, and Gideon Vale was the star. He stood at the podium, all polished confidence and civic duty, clicking through a presentation of a bright, solar-paneled Pier 14. He spoke of green initiatives and sustainable futures, smiling at the council members who hung on his every word. He was, by all appearances, winning. Vale and I sat in the second row. He was dressed in a dark suit, perfectly still, a sculpture of contained rage. I was in the only professional-looking blazer I owned. My hands clenched so tightly in my lap, my knuckles were white. "And so," Gideon concluded, his voice dripping with false sincerity, "it is with a heavy heart that we must recommend the council revoke the Corsini Consortium's leases. Their documented history of violence and their unwillingness to adapt to a cleaner, brighter Seattle simply make them unfit partners." A councilwoman nodded, opening her mouth to speak, but a new voice cut through the room. "Mr. Vale." Agent Tamsin Crow stood up from the back row. She was all business, holding a thin file. "Agent Crow, Federal Maritime Integrity Bureau." Gideon's polished smile faltered. "Agent, this is a city zoning matter." "It became a federal matter," Crow said, walking calmly down the aisle. "When you used interstate wire transfers to fund domestic terrorism." A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. "That is an outrageous, baseless accusation," Gideon sputtered. "Is it?" Agent Crow arrived at the podium, placing her file down. "Is it baseless that you hired Argent Lantern Logistics to install and then deliberately disable security cameras during the attempted assassination of Mr. Corsini?" "I have no connection." "Is it baseless," Crow continued, her voice rising, "that you funneled payments to a company called Silver Ridge Materials for industrial-grade microphosphors, the same specialized powder found on the poisoned glass?" Gideon's lawyer jumped up. "This is circumstantial, and you know it." "It was," Crow agreed, nodding, "until 6 hours ago, when your own accountant, the one you sent to the Nebula Room, the one facing conspiracy charges, decided to save himself. He gave us the final piece. A shell corporation registered to your personal assistant. We have the transfer logs. Mr. Vale. We have the money moving from your offshore accounts to Silver Ridge. We have the money moving to Argent Lantern to pay the Thorn Syndicate. And we have the fraudulent refund from Lantern, moving right back into your assistant's shell fund. You were paying everyone, all to manufacture a crisis. You did not just try to steal a pier. You tried to murder a man to get it." The room was utterly silent. Gideon Vale, his face the color of wet cement, was finished. The hearing was adjourned into chaos. We pushed through the pandemonium, Vale's hands securely on the small of my back, guiding me. "Kate is at the car," he said, his voice low. "Do not stop." We burst through the main doors and onto the wide stone steps of City Hall. A wall of cameras and shouting reporters hit us like a physical force. "Mr. Corsini, is it true?" "June Park, are you the one who saved him?" The noise was a blinding roar. Vale kept me moving, his body creating a path. I saw Cade across the street by the car, his head tilted. He was not looking at us. He was looking up. Vale saw it in the same instant. Not Cade. He saw a tiny, sharp glint of light on the glass facade of the building next to the library. A reflection, a scope. The sniper, Gideon's last desperate move. The world did not slow down. There was no time. Vale did not shout my name. He just reacted. He grabbed me by the waist, his arms like steel bands, and he spun. He did not just pull me. He pulled me through him, twisting his entire body so his back was to the library, shielding me completely. I heard the sharp crack of a high-velocity rifle and, in the same millisecond, the violent thwack of the bullet hitting the stone pillar right where my head had been. The impact shattered a nearby glass sign, and the air filled with stone dust and a shower of glass shrapnel. I felt Vale's whole body jolt against me. A sharp, pained grunt was forced from his lungs. "Vale!" I screamed, pushing against his chest. "You are hit!" He held me, his grip impossibly tight, his face buried in my hair for one agonizing second. "Glass!" He grunted, his voice tight with pain. "Just glass. In my back. I am fine." Across the street, Cade was already on his radio, his own weapon drawn and aimed. "FMIB team, rooftop library. Rooftop target is moving east." We heard shouts as two federal agents who had been guarding the door swarmed past us, running up the library steps. It was over in less than 5 minutes. Cade's voice came through Vale's earpiece, audible even to me. "They have him. He's alive. He's talking." Vale finally loosened his grip, his hands moving to my arms. "It is over, June. It is really over." The sniper, cornered and facing a life sentence, had confessed on the spot. He was funded directly by Gideon, activated by a text sent 3 minutes after Agent Crow began to speak. The order was simple: silence the girl, permanently. The press conference was chaos. They ushered us back inside, into a briefing room. A paramedic was trying to look at Vale's back, which was bleeding from 2 deep gashes from the flying glass. Vale waved him away, refusing to sit. Agent Crow took the podium and laid out the charges: conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, obstruction of justice, domestic terrorism, and public endangerment. Then the questions came, all aimed at Vale. "Mr. Corsini, what is your response to Vale's accusations? Will the Corsini Consortium be taking over Pier 14 now?" Vale stepped to the microphone. He looked tired. His shirt was stained with blood, but he had never looked more in command. "My response is not important," he said, his voice quiet, silencing the room. "What is important are the victims. I am formally requesting that the Federal Maritime Integrity Bureau extend its full, permanent witness protection program to Miss Rhea Kowalski and to Miss Juniper Park." My head snapped up. He was protecting us publicly, making us untouchable. "Furthermore," he continued, "Gideon Vale used Pier 14 as a weapon against this city. It will not be a prize for me. The Corsini Consortium is officially withdrawing its bid. We are signing over our current lease interest to a newly formed community trust to be managed by the dockworkers and residents of the Duwamish. Let the people, not corporations, decide its future." The room was stunned. He had just given away the very thing they were all fighting over. He had taken away Gideon's entire motive. As officers cuffed a broken, sputtering Gideon Vale, Agent Crow touched my arm. "Miss Park, do you have anything to say?" I looked at Vale. He nodded, once, shoulder to shoulder. I stepped up to the microphone, my hands shaking. I looked at the sea of cameras. I am just a bartender," I said, my voice small but clear. "For the past week, I have been told that I am weak, that I am a pawn, that I am a liability. And I believed it. I took a deep breath. I was weak, but I was not invisible. Gideon Vale was powerful, but he was afraid. He was afraid of a bartender. He was afraid of the truth. What happened today? It happened because the truth, my truth, finally got louder than his money." I looked at Agent Crow. "I just want to say, when society finally listens to the small people, the big ones stop sounding so loud." There was a second of silence, and then the room, even the jaded press, erupted in applause. We walked out of the briefing room, back onto the same steps. The flashbulbs were a sea of white fire. Vale stopped, ignoring the shouts. He reached up and, his hand perfectly steady, gently touched the bandage on my temple. "You were magnificent, Mao," he whispered, his voice for me alone. "The cameras went insane." He smiled, a true, unguarded smile that lit his dark eyes. "I love you, Juniper Park." I looked up at him. This dangerous, complicated, and deeply good man. "I know," I whispered back, a smile of my own finally breaking free. "You have since the night you let the glass fall." The resolution was fast. My mother and Rhea were granted temporary federal protection, though Rhea immediately refused it, opting for Vale's more reliable security at the St. Lucia Temple. Vale signed the papers, officially giving Pier 14 to the new trust. The Thorn Syndicate and Argent Lantern vanished, their assets seized, their leadership arrested or scattered. I made my choice. I did not take the protection. I did not run. I stayed. Not because I was a girl in fear, needing a protector, but because I was a woman who had found her partner. 2 weeks later, the Nebula Room turned its purple lights back on. I was behind the bar, polishing a highball glass. My hands were no longer chapped. He was in his seat, the one facing the door, the one with the view of the mirror. He was sipping his club soda, but he was not watching the door. He was watching me. A new server, young and nervous, approached a tourist at the bar. "Excuse me, sir," she whispered. "This drink is from the gentleman at the end." The tourist reached for the gifted drink. I did not move. I did not shout. I just stopped polishing and looked at Vale. He caught my eye, he knew. A slow, easy smile spread across his face. He reached across the bar, his hand covering mine, his fingers lacing with mine. With his other hand, he calmly pushed the gifted drink back toward the server, a silent, polite refusal. He did not let go of my hand. We had both learned the lesson. Do not drink what they are serving. Do not swallow the injustice, and never, ever let fear drink your future. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you're tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and let us know your city or country. Let's connect and share your thoughts on June and Vale's journey. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And if you really loved it, please support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.